In this video today, I will be discussing poverty and how people below poverty have to work harder than those who aren't poor. To do this, I will be using my academic sources to show some of the many disadvantages those living under poverty faces. These disadvantages show that there are inequities between the rich and the poor in many aspects of life, which would cause a poor person to work harder in life than it would a rich person. The starting position of my argument, which was just based off my personal experience, hasn't changed since my research. In fact, my research supported exactly what I was saying. The first part of evidence I would use to support my side is how the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. In an article written by Vanessa Baird titled, she explains how the rich are promoting the spread of wealth and decline of poverty by creating plutocracies. A plutocracy is a ruling class of people derived from wealth. According to Baird's article, the plutocrats deliberately crash unions and cut wages, which affects most of the people living under poverty. This would force them to have to work a lot harder for a lot less. This must be one of the reasons why her article states that household income is down 5% in the past year. She also states in her article, the world economy is in a fix, and most people are getting poorer. But for one group of people, life just gets better no matter where they live, known as the HNWIs, high net worth individuals. This global elite's fortune just keeps rising. This clearly shows that as it gets harder for the poor people, it just becomes easier for the rich. She also says in her article that in the past year, the 400 richest Americans have seen their wealth grow by 200 billion, enough to provide every student in the country with free education. And wages have always been dropping, according to an article published called Working Harder, Getting Nowhere by Nancy Gibbs and Kathy Boot. The Labor Department reported that despite the exorbitant stock market and mild inflation, real wages keep on falling. For the lowest earning 10% of workers, the weekly paycheck averaged $225 last year, a 10% drop since the late 70s after inflation is taken into account. In Nancy Gibbs and Kathy Boot's article, Working Harder and Getting Nowhere, there's a section called Close to the Edge, and it states that in Atlanta, a quarter of the people who call the homeless hotline are the working people: school teachers, chefs, computer maintenance men, air flight attendants. The standard recommendation is that a family should budget 30% of its income for housing. Among the working poor, 70% is more typical. Spending 70% of your income for just housing alone leaves a person to budget 30% of the remaining money for food, clothing, gas, phone bills, and other miscellaneous expenses, which in the end just makes it harder for the person living under poverty than somebody who is not. This would no doubt make a person seek financial aid. I think the biggest argument against my side of this topic is that people tend to believe that those living below poverty receive financial aid are lazy freeloaders of the government, saying that they don't work hard. I, however, will provide you with data to show that receiving financial aid is more of a smart thing to do rather than lazy. In Nancy Gibbs and Kathy Boot's article, Working Hard, Getting Nowhere, there's a section of that article called Welfare versus Work. An urban study considered the case of a hypothetical Pennsylvania woman with 2 children who received $4,836 in AFDC, $2,701 in food stamps, and $3,000 in medical benefits, for a total of $10,537 in cash and benefits. If she took a full-time job at minimum wage, her family would gain $9,516 in earnings before taxes and lose Medicaid, AFDC, and 1/3 of her food stamps. Moreover, she would have to find pay for daycare. Welfare recipients who take part in job training and education programs are eligible for subsidized care. For the working poor, daycare can consume half of their take-home pay. In this case, the hypothetical woman would have then only been left with 2 choices: either take financial aid and receive over $10,000 annually in cash and medical benefits, or work a minimum wage job earn less, and lose medical coverage and 1/3 of her food stamps. With the two hungry mouths of her children to feed, it would be smart, not lazy, to pick financial aid. Working would have also costed her a percentage of her already low pay for a babysitter. With wages going down, the best option for the lady and her kids would be welfare. Not only are the wages of most jobs dwindling, but access to jobs for a person living below poverty is becoming more scarce as well. Data and how job access is actually changing can be provided in an article by John Pease and Lee Martin titled Want Ads and Jobs for the Poor, a Glaring Mismatch. It provides 3 studies conducted on the help want ads of those classified sections of the newspaper to describe the work opportunities for the unemployed poor. The studies conducted showed that the ratio between job seekers and available job vacancies during the middle of the 1960s was 2.5 to 1. During the early 1970s, that number climbed to 4 to 1. In the late 1970s, it was 5 to 1. And by the time it was 1982, the job ratio between job seekers and job vacancies was already at 10 to 1. This study just shows that the demand for jobs keeps going up, but the access in actual job vacancies isn't. If wages will never go up and job access keeps going down, the poor person is always going to have to work a lot harder than the richer person in the end. They may even have to take up 2 or 3 jobs just to get by.